I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening. So, welcome to the Teakink podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
We are with Jake Dean, correct?
Jake Dean, yes.
And feel free to sit however you wish.
I'm getting comfortable.
This is the only way my legs go. And Jake, we met on a call, right? You booked one of my mentoring calls.
Yes.
How are things going?
Things are going very well, and I'm super excited to meet you. And also, I would like to say a big thank you because I feel like you really paved the way for other sex workers. And I would say it's like you almost gave a hand for some people to express themselves or to see that this unclear path can be filled with color, in a sense.
Aww.
Which is beautiful, and it inspired me as well. I mean, I told friends about you, and then I was like, whoa, oh my God, look at this. Like, she is pioneering this industry and
it's very kind.
Putting good stories out in the universe, because usually there are a lot of bad things about this industry because that's more attractive sometimes in the media, I feel like.
Oh yeah, bad things said. Yeah, I mean, all of us are chipping away. It's just I happen to have a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I really feel like it does also, for me, in a sense, it creates a vision onto, you know, what kind of path can you walk, or what kind of advocacy can you do, or how can you make it more comfortable for others? Because if we don't speak up about it, people that have assuming stigmas, that will be still the leading line of thought about this work and the industry.
Yes.
And by speaking up about it, people can choose their own perspective or see that it can be different as well.
Yes, perfect.
And not everybody does that because it's scary. I mean, some people, their environments they don't know, or they're scared to put their face out there, which is very understandable. It's very fair, but I think that one, you had the capacity to do it, and two, that you actually do it is very inspiring.
Thank you. That's very kind. Well, thank you also for being inspiring here on the podcast today. Out and about. And when we had the call, you were asking a few things about positioning and branding, and where are you at now? Like, how would you describe what it is that you do? And
I would say primarily I'm high-end escort, providing my service to other men, sometimes women. I mean, I think being in this industry makes you quite open, especially sexually. You get to experience a lot of new things. You get to push your boundaries a little bit more, in a sense. So I'd say that changed as well. And alongside that, I run a high-end escort agency together with a business partner. And from these two things, I branched off into writing and doing private pole dance entertainment. So I would say that those are my two main things. And from there, I branched off into other creative endeavors, so to speak, at least for the moment, because I like to be multidisciplinary and try new things, novelty in a certain sense.
And how long have you been in the industry, and how have you found it?
Now for about 3 years.
Okay.
And how I found it was I was collecting these old vintage Playboy magazines when I was younger. And I found them very inspiring, like seeing how sex changed throughout the years. And I would see these women as quite strong, confident figures, whereas my surroundings would look down upon these people. And they wouldn't necessarily know them in person. And for me, this was always something that I questioned. I thought, but you don't know anybody that is actually in this industry. How can you judge somebody? And this sparked up a curiosity where I was like, what is that really like? And I guess a combination of looking at those Playboys and being younger and being exposed to series such as The Client List and being from Amsterdam, seeing the red light district, I saw that playing with your sexuality, being able to provide a service in that sense out of that was something interesting. And then at some point I was doing my business studies and I thought, you know what, it was itching because I was occupied with expressing yourself in that way, and dancing, the sensuality, and everything about it, more from like a female perspective, because I always looked at shows and read books about that perspective, because for gay men there's not a lot out there, I feel like. And at one point I just tried to find an escort agency, which I couldn't find, at least not what I wanted to represent. Like, it was blurry faces, like your typical macho guys, and that was just not me. And also the websites, they were a little bit, I would say, seedy, sketchy.
Okay.
So I started my own website and started advertising, and that's how I gave it a shot and got introduced to the industry. And since my first booking, never looked back, just continued, because it felt liberating, and I could see that all the things that people were saying about it, at least for me, were not true. It was more warm, intimate. It didn't feel like I was objectified or used for sex, or that I was selling my body, which is a term I very much dislike, because at the end of the day, you don't own the person. You create this intimate bubble where you get to spend time together. And these are two adults talking about what they want in a confidential and consensual way, so to speak.
So you placed your own first booking. You didn't go through an agency or anything.
No.
Oh, very daring.
Yes, I know. I mean, if I look back at it now, I think, ooh,
Okay.
I was very fortunate to meet the right people, because I was very young, and when you're young and naive, people can...
People always try.
Yeah, people always try.
Young, naive, otherwise.
And I could have attracted the wrong crowd. I mean, I definitely was challenged, and the load of, I'm sure you know this, the load of messages and filtering you need to do, managing, it was a bit overwhelming, because it was not only you need to be your own marketing manager, you need to be your own finance guy, you need to know all the legal things that are going on. But luckily I did business, so I understood the core of how some things work, but it's such an industry where you have to scream silent almost, and that is tricky.
Yeah, I guess customer relationship management to quite a degree.
Yes.
Yeah, a degree that you cannot necessarily complain about. Yeah, because I mean, when people have to deal with customers all the time, but if people come to us and try to waste our time and try to give us attitude even before they make a booking, who are we going to complain to? You know, and then if we do, we're told that, of course, you just have to deal with it. Because, I mean, what do you do for work? You work in sex. It's just like, what do you expect? It's like humanity.
Yes, respect. Decency.
What I'm giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how have you found it in the last 3 years? Has it looked different? Do you feel like the job has changed for you? Do you feel like the job has changed you?
Yes. I feel like the job has changed me in a lot of ways. I feel like mostly it has made me grow up quite fast, and I'm not seeing that as a bad thing, because I was always gravitated towards a little bit of an older crowd. Like, I had older friends, older boyfriends, because for me, I'm attracted to a frequency of deep conversations. In a sense, I like to talk about certain deeper things in life. And I found that with my fellow students at school, they would just, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like, they would watch Netflix on the weekend and they would talk about their favorite show and their new crush. And for me, I was flying to Switzerland to meet this business conglomerate, and he would share things about his mind, and that would just be so exciting to me, like the little secrets and just it made me see that there is a lot more possible. So it opened a lot of possibilities for me in the sense that I took off a lot of limitations in my mind. I was able to grow up and shape myself more in a way that I understood my sexuality a bit more, who I was and how I wanted to carry myself and where I was going. And I felt like I found something where I could make a difference. And I think also, in a sense, I went through phases where first I had a different stage name, and then I changed it because I wanted to rebrand everything. And going through those transitions, I kind of like thought about, okay, you make this identity, this character, this fantasy. But I did notice that eventually I was kind of becoming what I envisioned for that character. And I feel like now down the line, the last year, a lot has changed because I'm more comfortable talking about it. My surroundings know, including my family. And I no longer have to keep it a secret as well. So that double identity part kind of fell away, and that opened a lot of freedom. And funny enough, that attracted different clients as well. I guess the energy I put out in the photos as well, because now I have more freedom also showing my face, it attracts a very different type of clientele. And even now versus 6 months ago, a lot of things changed as well. And I see that everything went progressively. But at the beginning it was a little bit slow because I was still studying and I had my job in marketing as well. And I wasn't doing much bookings. And I always said that I didn't want to do this full time. I thought that that would not be healthy for the mind and body. But as soon as I quit my marketing job and decided to do this full time, I proved myself wrong. So there are a lot of changes and transitions throughout that time, I would say.
Many. 3 years. That's quite a lot to go through in 3 years. Do you have a network around you that you can bounce things off of, or?
Yes, I mean, I have incredible friends, and I have some people that are in the industry as well, and we can talk and we can spar a little bit because, yeah, it can be, how do I say it? Sometimes it can be a little bit alienating in a sense.
I agree.
Because you have a very different routine. And even though you have friends that support you and love you no matter what, there's still something odd. Sometimes you cannot explain certain things to the full colors, which you would want to, but you almost have to be in the room to understand what you're going through. But oh, you already think of some things, huh?
I'm remembering all of those rooms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have some friends who have been with me for a very long time, like 20, 30 years, you know. And I'm thinking of one friend in particular who is always there for me, always listening. And now I realize some of the crazy shit that I've said over the years. And she's always just like trying to figure it out, making space for it in her mind and having an imagination. And I'm very, very grateful for somebody like that, because that's not average. And you cannot expect people to do that either, because it is potentially so foreign. You know, like if I think about just last week, I was on some oligarch's like a super yacht, and I would never have anything to do with this guy ever, you know.
Yes.
But just because of the job and the hiring, it's like you just end up in these spaces having weird conversations, having access to, like you were saying, things that give you perspective, and not necessarily always it's always useful, not necessarily something that I gravitate towards, but it's just otherworldly. Yes. Sometimes. And you want to seek familiarity even with a drive to find these new experiences within you, right?
Of course, you want to have somebody you can spar with, and it's also very, my friends are always there, like, okay, rubbing their hands, being like, okay, what story are we gonna hear next?
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to play that role to a certain extent, but at some point it's nice to just feel normal in some other ways.
Yes, it's nice to just be with your friends that have always looked at you for who you are and know what you do, and just always see you as their, you know, their loving little baby, and always have their arms open for you. Would you, if I may ask, would you ever consider having like one of your close friends like anonymously have a talk with you on the podcast about like what their perspective is and how they feel about everything? Because sometimes when I talk to friends, I say, I wish we could just get a microphone and record this conversation, because for them it is foreign, and sometimes they give me perspectives or feedback on things I tell them that I'm like, oh, that would be interesting for other people to hear as well.
Sometimes it's just so like a common sense, you know, like because you live in this almost extreme sort of experiences, just things happening in great succession really fast. You're packing a lot into an interaction. It's this heightened way of living in a lot of ways. And then I'll tell it to a friend, and then they'll just tell me the most simple thing, and I'll be like, oh, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you for bringing me back. Yeah. But so, yeah, no, I mean, I could. The one I'm thinking of is pregnant right now and probably doesn't really want to.
Oh, no. She's getting ready for the big moment.
Yeah. But I'll consider that
amazing.
maybe in 3 years when she's slept.
Yes. And also congratulations. That's something
her.
Really beautiful as well.
I know. There's a whole other thing to go through. But so 3 years, you've started an agency, you've seen a change in your branding, but also the clientele.
Yes.
You have switched to full-time.
Yes.
You've understood how that can work for you. I think that's like a management thing that a lot of maybe freelancers versus not have to go through anyway. But what does it look like right now? What does the career look like at the moment? Are you happy with how that looks? What about it keeps you captivated?
I would say right now I'm really in a period of contentment because I feel like with the group of clients I have right now, they're just very, very nice people to be around with. They're people that I admire and people that give me very beautiful feedback as well. And this can be what some people don't see is like, I have a client and he was sexually traumatized and he booked an escort to that he would know that somebody that wouldn't step over his boundaries or was able to read his body language to get back into feeling okay with sexual experiences.
Yep.
And having met him extensively and where he is at now and dating, and we go through all that, like I helped him make a Tinder profile so he would get ready for dating and, some pros and cons. And you go through this process with somebody and you really bond.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like having those clients where it's not only, of course, monetarily it pays out, but also it fulfills your soul in a sense. Maybe that sounds very woo-ha, but it really does feel beautiful that I'm able to help somebody with that aspect, which is something I would never think about when I started, that was possible or that was something that I necessarily could take on, because I still think like maybe I would not be the right person to help him through that process entirely, but I'm honored that I can give him the steps or make him comfortable now that he progresses into feeling more comfortable with having sex, essentially. And I think if I would have a conversation with my high school self, I would just be at this point, very curious about, okay, how did you do certain things or how do you feel? And I feel like I've had a long period where I was working towards goals. And now I'm just very content with how things are, with the group of people I have around me and how I set myself up. Only thing which I would now say would be nice to improve is taking off some workload in a sense, because doing this alone, managing the content, the bookings, and you have to be on a lot of time. You have to be accessible to people, because essentially being specialized in a boyfriend experience, you need to
be available.
Be available, yes. And of course, there are limits and you need to shut down sometimes as well. But I think creating a little bit more space there is necessary. But other than that, I'm very content and happy with where I'm at now. And of course, I know after some time it will start shivering again. I think I want to go to new heights. But for now, I'm just very happy how things are.
It sounds like you're very aware of the processes that are happening within you. Have you always been that thoughtful of your own mind?
I mean, I think it's the support system around me, my friends. They're really they're ones that would sit me down on a couch and say, look, you need to process. You need to sit down, take a moment. And
why? What are you doing in order for them to sit you down? You freaking out a bit?
Well,
you stressed?
No. It would be that I would go on a trip for 2 weeks. I would be home, and then 2 days later I would fly to the other opposite end of the world to meet somebody else, and they're like, look, you need to sit down, you need to
relax a little,
decompress, you need to
it's the
process.
perspective.
Exactly.
Because you can get caught up. Yeah. I lived without telling too many people for quite some time, but I also had the energy, when I was working in my 20s. And so it was go, 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 but I burned out. So very good on you for having people.
Yes.
And opening up and having space for yourself. So you go on 2-week trips with clients?
Yes.
Nice. How was your first long booking? And how long was it?
Oof. My first long booking, I would say that the difference between, for me, a weekend would be long, but I wouldn't consider that extensive. I would say a week. And I would say my first, the difference between like a weekend booking and a week booking, a weekend, it's a lot easier to be in this mysterious bubble. But if you spend a week together, at some point, some personal things will start falling and rolling around. So you really need to make sure that this person you're comfortable around them and you are able to spend a week with them, because otherwise they're going to notice, you're going to notice, and you're not going to have a good time. So for me, it's always a must that I have met them before. So in this case, my first big trip for a week, it was in the Caribbean. With this, he was quite a young gentleman. He was like 34 at the time, very sweet guy. And we would just have a week of pleasure. And for me, it was quite new sharing a vacation with somebody like that. And we would do jet ski riding, and we would have dinners and talk about life and family, like how he would feel pressured into performing and what his path of what path he walked basically, and how he looks at dating. We could talk about all those fun little details in life and get to be intimate as well. So at that moment I was like, wow, okay, I'm just here having a good time with him, doing all these experiences. This is great. And in the moment I felt very good, and afterwards I noticed that it takes a different kind of energy. Because in the moment, I was like, wow, this is amazing. My energy doesn't run out, and you're on this high in a sense, adrenaline. But you're in a bubble, and when you get home, it's a very different bubble, and that's where where I really had to decompress and feel like, okay, a week is different. It's
long.
Yes, it's long.
Yeah, you need to figure out how to. I don't know about you, but I had to figure out how to carve space for myself, even when you're with somebody.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess when you're naturally inclined to being there with people, interested in people, entangling with people, and it's all very gives you a lot. But at the same time, if I want this to be a long-term endeavor, long-term job, do I need to take longer breaks in between? Do I need to make sure that they know I need an hour to myself in the mornings? Do I need to just not host the conversation sometimes and say, why don't you take the lead right now?
Yes.
So it's just like all these little tricks to make sure that it's sustainable for everybody also. Because I like to be the entertainer and to be and it is this high, but then at the end you're like, what did I just do to myself? Yeah. And sometimes, it's definitely worth it. And then other times it's like, maybe that could be managed better.
Yeah, I would say you get to, at least for me, I get to really connect with the person I'm with. And it creates that more, I can already tell from that point on, how sustainable it will be in the future. What kind of dynamic do we have? How do we feel with each other? And it usually turns out for the better after a trip. And it's like, okay, fun, let's plan the next one. But with that break to decompress a little bit.
Would you say that that's the majority of the bookings at the moment? It's quite longer endeavors?
Yes, because I would say I would give priority to that. I think it's important to really connect, because also I want it to be an experience. And to get to that ultimate climax, I feel like you have to combine the mental and the physical. And that mental part, you cannot, I think you can create it, but I feel like you cannot optimally create it in a 1 hour session doing a boyfriend experience. I feel like you need some more run-up time, get to know the person, see what turns them on, and give some seductive stares in person, or know which ways to touch. That it takes time. That's why I prefer that, and just like to keep a more select group and have a long-term endeavor with them.
I went through a phase where I only wanted long-term clients. Right now I'm in a hyper short session phase. And like, give me your hour, your 2, 4 max, and let's just knock it out. But I guess it's a little bit different when it comes to domination, because there's almost an agreed power dynamic established even before they step into the room. So they understand that they're going to submit, they're like surrender when they get in, and that some element of that is necessary. I can wind them into it, but this is kind of what you're here for.
Yes.
Yeah. And so perhaps that's why maybe the shorter bookings are suitable for that.
But I'm very curious, how do you manage that on a long trip? Because I would imagine, like, I've had these requests where somebody wants me to be not like a dom, but to the edge of it. They want me to be dominant and take the lead, but then they expect me to do that everywhere. The dinner table, when we walk on the street. And how is that for you? Because I can imagine if you...
It just has to be your personality at this point. I'm very lucky that I usually... Unfortunately, the flip side is that in the majority of life, I have to try to control myself, But actually, I am more happy to run everything all the time. Yeah.
So it's natural for you.
It's natural for me.
It's perfect.
I found my spot, but it does mean that relating to a lot of people and in my day-to-day, I have to like control myself. Yeah.
Yes, but it's how nice it is if you can let loose.
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
It's great to be able to let loose. And I've become a little bit better at figuring out how to use it without it being obvious. Yeah. But that's why I started it in the first place. Somebody suggested, just because my personality is different to the perceived average woman.
Yes.
Or the way that women are supposed to come across. So I found my spot, I guess. Where else would I belong? Do you have any suggestions? Maybe a boardroom here and there.
The boardroom, well, that would definitely be something interesting.
Yeah.
Would you ever, how would I say it? How would you decompress psychologically from these sessions? Because I can imagine that doing a boyfriend experience is one thing, but another thing is taking over somebody's mind to give them that space of losing that control. But that takes a different kind of energy to control the situations, play with somebody's mind, and being hyper aware on that. In that sense, how do you decompress psychologically so you can go back to like a baseline?
Are we talking about long bookings or short bookings?
I would say a long booking.
Okay, so if I'm with somebody for say a week to a year, how do I can only just make sure there's time in between and that there are limits around communication.
Yes.
I think that's what gives me space in a longer booking, and establishing where they fit and their roles, and that they have things to keep them busy when they're not with me, so that there's still an element of control, place of me in their lives, but it doesn't necessarily take too much of my energy. Some people, it's going to be different. You probably understand. Some people, it's more of a natural dynamic, and others, it takes a little bit more work to create those spaces so that everybody is getting what they want.
Yes.
So it's going to be different. But I think the thing that works for me is time, making sure that I have like a 2-week break or a week and a half in between seeing them, or they get however many days a month, just so it's just like, okay, and then I can go back in. But then
fresh energy. Yeah.
There are some people who can be littered throughout my week and it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So it depends.
Of course, yeah. It depends a lot on a person.
What they want from you and how much that meets what you are able to give.
Yes.
Yeah. But just so we have it, like the short ones, because they're very intense and I'm intense in and I'm intense out, I've practiced it so many times that it's easier now.
Yes.
You know, I can just kind of like zoom in and zoom out and then just like brush my teeth and everything's fine. Yeah. But I guess because I've done it so much,
Yes.
and whether it's you're doing a more girlfriend experience, boyfriend experience thing, I think once you know how to move, you know how to laugh, you know how to touch, you know how to like push into somebody, it just becomes like a habit. And so it doesn't take as much energy anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. And sure, it's going to look different from each person. And when you don't know somebody yet, you need to figure out how much to push or not. But that practice can also become much faster. I mean, it's been 14 years. So, you know, it'll get easier.
Yes, you know what you're doing. Exactly.
That said, it's still management, still self-reflection, still management. Because people can ask a lot of you.
Yes.
And as much as you're somebody naturally inclined to give, that is still something that has an upper limit.
Yeah, of course, you need to protect certain parts of yourself as well.
Yeah, because when you don't give those boundaries, people tend to want to just push sometimes, you know?
Yeah, or test them, especially when you get to deal with people that...
Why?
Yes, I think my theory is very much if certain people are so used to getting everything they want and desire, then they just want to get everything also out of you, but it just sometimes doesn't work like that. But I think that's also the fun part sometimes in domination. It's like, you're not gonna get that. And that's probably also the high for them, I could imagine.
Yeah, I think it can be that sweet spot can also be quite frustrating. But that reminds me of a point I didn't want to bring up earlier, but because it was quite early on. But do you think that that's a price point thing, or do you think that's just a personality thing? Like, because, you know, I've also started charging ridiculous amounts of money that are just inaccessible for people on an average scale. And I sometimes wonder, am I starting to get skewed in terms of the client and the client interaction because it's a certain socioeconomic demographic that's coming my way, you know? If we're talking about people who think that they can get something from you or not.
I think that's a good question. I feel like my rates on average are like they're higher because I want to sing myself. But if I look at that's a whole nother topic, like average rates, for example, with females and males, there are differences. But what I would say from my first rates until what it's now, the clients are very different. And I feel like, yes, it does attract people that are more used to getting their ways, but not exclusively. There are also a lot of people that that are very kind, sweet, and will not test your limits. But it really depends on the way they gain their wealth. That's where I see the difference. Because for me, I perceived if it happened through a way where they had to almost crawl over somebody else's back, then it's more to the point where it's like, okay, I'm used to getting what I want. And those are not necessarily clients.
Or they'll fight to get what they want.
Or they'll fight to get what they want in any way with any resource they have. But if it's somebody that got successful out of their passion, they pursued something they loved and they were able to share it with their team, for example, they didn't have to. Those people are more appreciative, I would say, or...
So it's a personality thing as opposed to necessarily a socioeconomic thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I agree. I don't see too many people these days, and so maybe I should stop talking about what client interactions look like anymore.
But it's so different. I mean, each client it's a different depth, different background. But that's also the fun thing. You get to see so many different personalities, and psychologically, it's very interesting what you're exposed to, how you can develop your people skills, essentially. And
do you think they've changed much since you first began?
Yes.
And how do you think they've changed?
My people skills? I feel like I'm more in tune with somebody's body language. I feel like I understand more nonverbal cues than before. And also listening in a certain way, like really being present and really listening and what comes out of that. And also how I can interact throughout that listening, identifying certain things or being able to go deeper with questions. I think when you're in a space where you ask a lot of questions, you go on a lot of essentially first dates, you start to become savvy in the things I might ask or identify or see. So I think that is an ongoing growth, but there's still so much to learn, and I feel like I'm still the tip of the iceberg and very much a rookie in whichever way I'm going, because what we talked about, the path can be quite unclear if you want to do this long term and if you see a bigger vision in a sense.
Do you see this as a potentially long term?
I do, because I really like the challenges of this career. I really like the people I get to meet that are just not following a herd like sheeps. It's very authentic. I love the people that I get to meet. For example, also, if I didn't do this, I would never be able to meet you. And for me, you're truly inspiring, like I said before. And I feel like, for me, that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. Being with people that inspire me, that I can look up to, that don't follow a one-size-fits-all. And doing something that is challenging, where I can feel like, look, I can have fun with somebody. It has a social, psychological aspect. And essentially, it can be quite fun being somebody's boyfriend.
For a little while.
For a little while, yes.
And then walking away. Yeah, I think there's so many ways to approach it. And I had no idea that I would have a podcast. Like when I first started, I had no idea that I'd be living in London, that I would be working independently, that the majority of my work would come from online and brand deals. It's just also strange, you know, and I'm still just following a thread of things. But I think the biggest takeaway from me is, yes, the clients have been interesting. The work is fascinating in terms of what it pushes my brain to figure out. And it's a creative process, essentially. It's a creative process of how I can use my mind.
Yes.
But I think the community has taught me so much in terms of what is fairness, what is fairness in a legal landscape. Why is the world the way it is in terms of how it perceives sexuality, and the women who are within that choosing their own way? You know, what is money? It's just made me question so many things just by being in the industry. And it's not necessarily great that I've had to ask those things, but the outcome has been much more useful for my opportunity to live in this moment.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm also very grateful for inspiration and people and making the most out of the little amount of time.
Do you feel like you are also more able to be present in life, doing what you do, or having chosen this career? Do you feel like it opened more space to question, okay, what is life essentially for you?
I've always been a weirdo like that, though. I've always been like thinking and wondering and what is meaning, etc. I think if anything, it's given me the financial freedom to be able to do that more.
Yes.
I think is probably the nuts and bolts of very basic thing. I think I've always been very curious, which is why I've been able to do a path less trodden or less acceptable. But I think that, again, with my business background and timing and all of these things, it's just put me in a financial position where I can have more freedom to be able to indulge in thinking like that, as well as platforming thoughts like this as well. So, yeah, it's just many things coming together that kind of worked out for me. But I feel like we've talked for a while now, and there is an upper limit to how long we can talk. I also don't want to keep you. I know that you came in specially for this, but
of course, don't worry.
Thank you. But at the very beginning, you mentioned that you position yourself and your agency as a high-end agency.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
For me, high-end means combining those forces more in the achieving that ultimate climax. Not only the physical, but also the mental. It's an experience. You spend a longer amount of time and you're with somebody that, for example, we have minimum requirements for the girls and boys that are at the agency as well. We really want them to be able to carry out the conversation, present themselves in a proper way, and be able to be in those high-end spaces as well, and be natural in those spaces while also adding an excitement.
Space?
Sorry?
What's a high-end space?
I would say high-end space in for example, a Michelin star restaurant or certain hotels, or if some businessman wants to have a companion, a lady alongside him, because sometimes it's still seen as a little bit odd if they go to certain meetings being single, that they can be their wives and be able to talk about the things that are going on the table, sometimes politics or sometimes climate. So I feel like it's important for them to cater to that level of clients, but also just being very interesting people that have a lust for life in a sense.
Yeah, I guess I mention it because there's a lot of talk within the industry about like elitism within the industry, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Whorearchy, for example.
The Whorearchy.
There's something called a Whorearchy, and basically the further away you get from penetrative sex, the more highly regarded or accepted you are. So I feel like maybe cam girls are right at the top, and then doms, even though we're super involved, but anyway. And then I think like people who don't have so much choice, you know, like street-based people usually, right, are maybe seen as the bottom foundations in my words of this hierarchy sort of pyramid. And I guess when we start to talk about terms like high end, there's a lot of conversations about the elitism of that or not. And I'm not saying that there's necessarily no use for that term. I'm just wondering what it means to you and what it means within the industry and how we can think about marketing and differentiation. And like, do you give classes to the people who work for you, or?
Yeah, so we definitely, the thing is, in the agency, what I was really missing is an agency that was able to represent a certain essence, also that is really about the experience, and it's really about also the mindset around it. It's really, really important for us that everything is respectful and everything is consensual. But essentially, if somebody wants to be more specialized in S&M, or if somebody wants to be more specialized in a certain boyfriend or girlfriend experience, we ask them before we hire them, where do you want to go? What is your vision? Where do you actually want to end up? And then based on that, we're able to give them the tools. If they want to do more with longer bookings, we can give them the tools of, okay, we will do a meeting and I'll explain to you how you can manage those bookings, or how you can behave at those bookings, or what we can do to get more of those bookings. So we try to not be a middleman, but actively also try to support, because essentially as an agency, I feel like that is also what your job is. You need to also look at what is next, because it would be unfair if I would think about my development and where I'm going next, but with the agency, it would just be like, okay, here's a booking coming in, here you have to be, this is what you have to do, and that's it. I also like to think with them, where do you want to grow, in a sense? And we're still very small and boutique-y. And I think because I've been in this industry myself, I just want it to be kind of almost like a family feeling.
What you wanted.
Sorry?
You want to be what you wanted. Yes,
exactly. And just that everything goes with care and safety, and that I could take the pressure off the messaging and all that, just in a fair way. And of course, at the end of the day, we also have to make money. That's a truth and given. But I think I can pin down that, what we created is a very comfortable space. We sometimes get drinks together, we do master classes, or we have a dinner together.
Sounds like a dream.
Very fun. No, really, it's...
Oh, I can tell you some agency stories of mine. Yeah. But I still remember my first good agency experience so fondly. And she didn't do master classes, but she gave me a lot of time. And she made me, she helped me think about my visual identity. This is when I was escorting.
Yes.
And what could be possible. And after a few years with her, because I get comfortable, I liked being with my agency and having the people I knew and the format and the place and everything. She was like, maybe it's time to go independent.
Yeah. I want to keep this family.
Yeah. But it worked, it worked. I went independent. I tried to do the indie escorting. I realized the dom stuff was probably stronger, and I just cut that out and went with this. And
look where you are now.
And I still pull a lot of like her photography ideas and her branding ideas, and we're still a little bit in touch. She gave me my early photos. It's so
That's
you
really
you
nice.
remember, you know. Yeah. And even though I feel like she needs to keep her space for herself so I don't press anything not too close or whatever, but will always be a very special person.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's very rare, especially what you hear about agencies. It's
There's some nightmare ones. Trying to send me off on a tour for my first ever booking, like as an escort.
yeah, that's not very comfortable.
Like, you want me to go to another city to do something I've never done before in something that's super stigmatized? It's just
No,
like,
but also you're dealing with people, people with emotions. You cannot throw somebody in a virus like that.
yeah.
That's not comfortable, and that's not how you ease into something like that, because it's something very. I'd say it takes a lot to be able to not only do this work but keep it sustainable, and I feel like that's not a sustainable way to start. Just pushing somebody in a deep end.
Yeah, I felt really the being that resource, you know? And of course, that's how it is. But you kind of have to look after your people
Yes.
also. How many people do you have in your agency?
Now 5 girls and 2 boys, but we like to keep it smaller so that we know all the boys and girls personally, and then also know how to match them. But yeah, it's been really fun. But I also like my personal journeys are very separate from the agency. I take the experience there, but I have a very different role there. I'm also not on the website there. But it's been fun, and it's been very different, a different way of looking at the industry, being on the backside.
And this agency is based where?
In the Netherlands.
Okay. And having that entity like that is easy enough to set up and...
Well, you need to have a very clean record because you need to get a permit, essentially. Okay. There are some regulations that are very strict about it, because at the red light district there was I hope it's not going on, but they had a lot of illegal workers that did not give consent for what they were doing, with a lot of pimps. So they got stricter, not only with agencies, but also working the red lights or street workers, and making sure everybody has the same rights, essentially, which we're not there at all yet. But you need to have a permit, and you need to have an office. There are certain regulations. You need to have a bank account, which most banks will not accept you as an agency.
Catch-22. Yeah, cool. Okay. And do you have to have a permit for you individually?
Actually, they were trying to push this rule. If you're an independent sex worker, you needed to apply at every governmental or at the major cities you would work at. But it's still on the table. They still haven't discussed that. And I mean, my guess is that the sex workers, most of them don't want that, because there would be a lot more eyes on it. And the thing is, we pay the same amount of taxes, but we cannot get a mortgage. Our healthcare is different. It's
a lot of discrimination still.
Exactly. So there is a long way to go, but in regards of more safety, yes, we do need to have a permit, and you need to have a clean record. They need to be at least 21.
Running an agency. Okay, all right. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have, and for taking time out from your multi-week booking to come and see me.
Yes, of course. My pleasure. My pleasure.
But is there anything else that you would like to mention before we send you back off into the world?
I would like to ask. I know in one episode you mentioned ordering spaghetti bolognese.
After every night to feel comforted, yeah.
Yes, a comfort thing. Yeah. Do you have more of those, how to say, cute habits? Grounding
habits when I'm on tour.
Habits. Yes.
I don't tour so much anymore. I don't session so much anymore. But the last time that I did, the best thing for me was being home. I had a big property in the middle of nowhere. It was just hearing nature as opposed to humans was very grounding for me. Yeah, knowing that I was a small fragment in the world. That was probably the thing that was the most important thing for me at the time when I was touring really heavily.
Yes.
But spaghetti bolognese at the end of the night, the same drink
it.
at the same spot in the same bar in the hotel. Sometimes I wouldn't see outside the hotel the entire tour. My friends in the town would come to that bar and sit with me at the same spot and have the same drink.
Oh, I love that.
There's a sauna and a spa at every hotel that I stay in. So I will go in between bookings if I have the time and do like a few sauna rounds and making my life as easy as possible. My gear lives at the hotel, basically.
Yes.
I don't know what they were thinking. This huge suitcase that I've made a booking for next month. See you.
The airports, going through the X-ray. What is all this?
No, I would travel bit by bit and bring all my gear in.
Yes.
And then I'd have a suitcase that would just live at the hotel because I'd have a constant booking every month at the hotel. So they would just keep my luggage until the next month that I was there. So I never had to travel with anything.
Oh, that is perfect.
Just like a bit of toiletries and easy. Make my life simple, you know? So just habits, routines, just make it effortless. Concentrate on the booking, get out. Eat as well as you can. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. I used to have... I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, something like a sarong that was handmade batik like from my family for a while, and I would lay it out in the hotel room just so there was something with me that was always
beautiful.
Like from home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Familiarity, especially in a hotel room where, sometimes a hotel room sometimes doesn't feel very homey. That's beautiful. And also that you're able to have a drink with friends or through these cities and build up a network.
Yeah, that was really fun. Yeah.
Or dating in a different city, yes.
Dating, getting on a dating app, just meeting somebody new could also be fun. But I used to stay at the same hotels. This is when I was touring in the same places. But when I was back in the day touring as a performer, and you'd never know what hotel you're staying at, never know anything, that was when that piece of fabric was very, very useful for me, just psychologically.
Yes, to hold on to.
I'm here now.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not like alone. It's one world.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. But I think community is so important. Hitting up a sex worker organization wherever you go, if you feel like a chat and support, that's also very useful. Yeah. So I don't know if any of those are very cute, but they were useful.
Yeah, I think cute is, if I think about it, cute is not the right word. I think
it's pretty cute.
It's a detail that stuck with me. I think spaghetti bolognese at the end of the night, that is just something that when I listened to that, I didn't forget it because I was trying to think about, do you
feel lonely when you're touring or traveling, or how do you feel sometimes? Is there
that is something that changed throughout time because I had a boyfriend for about a year, and then it was very different for me. I would always come home to a person essentially, and we would always talk about it, and he'd be in the same industry. And when that relationship was over, it was different because I didn't have that anymore. But there is also, how would I say it? Now I don't feel lonely touring. I actually really like being with my own mind. I think I feel more comfortable in my skin now, and I just like taking walks in the city and looking at the new buildings, or have a little adventure here and there, or be with my friends. I like to be a social butterfly. Go make new friends and spend time with them, quality time, or do something funny or crazy, an art workshop. I would know how to get by, and sometimes also just unwind. So I feel like I don't get lonely anymore, but there is this craving sometimes for somebody that is in the same industry, that has this understanding of what is going on, to brainstorm a little bit, to talk about experiences, not because I have to process them, but more because it is fun to talk about those.
We're social creatures. Yeah, it's nice to feel on the level with people.
Yes, exactly.
Well, if you spend more time in London, there's a lot of us around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like London is a great city.
Yeah, it is. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's been an honor. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Speak with you next time.